All right, we are on. All right, well, hello everybody and welcome. Thank you so much for coming out today. Beginning the 7th Annual Wellness Challenge, we have had just under 1,800 participants over the last 6 years. And this year we're sitting at 220 off of 24 teams. So thank you so much for coming. I'm just going to take a couple minutes right now to go through a few things to do with the Wellness Challenge. I know some members have been in it several years, some are brand new. So I'll go through a few different things before we begin our presentation today. And a hello to everybody on the video. This video will then be put up by tomorrow. So if you're looking for it, I give all the team captains the link. Then you can go on and you can watch this video presentation for 5 bonus points. So everybody here is going to get 5. Anybody who watches it at home can get 5 also. So my name is Val Chufu. I work for the City of Swift Current. I have been in charge of this Wellness Challenge over 7 years. It's been lots of fun. There's been a few changes here and there. And this is one part that we have added a couple years ago with the Lunch and Learn. Because as we know, to have an educational component to learn about why we do certain things and why it's important, over the past, we have done mainly our presentations on nutrition, a little bit of physical activity. This year we're excited. This was a recommendation. At the very end, there'll be a little survey monkey, and I always read through it carefully, take any feedback that I think we can improve the challenge. And this was a suggestion by a participant last year. What about talking about mental wellness and well-being? Which we all know is a very hot topic that we hear lots about. But what is it and what can we do? We don't want to get to the crisis where hopefully we can do things daily to help ourselves have a balanced life. I love that word. I don't know what it looks like to have a balanced life, but we always try to achieve the balanced life. And then also to feel connected to people. And what about when challenges come ahead? What do we do to try to get through those life's challenges? So we're very pleased and very appreciative that the Saskatchewan Health Authority are going to send out 4 different presenters. If you've seen the poster, we have every Thursday from 12:15 to 12:45 here at Lieutenant Colonel Clifton. Today it's going to be on the topic of sensory environment. Next week is depression, then anxiety, then stigmas and addictions. Please don't just look at that word, depression, and say, well, I don't have depression, I don't need to go. It doesn't mean there's going to be things and information that we can do to be preventative too. Also, at any point when Kaylee is presenting, if you have questions, it's fine. This is going to be question-answer where we are interacting. And then my little video camera, because I'm the professional behind that thing, it'll be swinging back and forth. Don't hesitate. It just makes it more entertaining for those listening at home. All right, I think that's about it. Oh, a couple things about the Wellness Challenge itself. Your team captain hopefully is passing on. I give weekly information, and then they pass it on to the members. Probably the worst team that doesn't get messages is my own, because I forget to pass it to them because I'm thinking of everybody else. And every week there'll be something there, a reminder, things that are going on. This week, this is a new addition, we're doing weekly challenges. So you can get 5 points for doing something this week to try a new exercise. So that might be at home, just trying something new. You might want to go to a class. Also, now that we have Google, you can YouTube any kind of workout, right? So you can do something at home, you don't have to have weights, you don't have to have resistance bands, just trying something new for 5 points. Next week, it's going to be around going on to the website, Bell Let's Talk, because that is during our week next week, and learning a little bit about mental wellness. There's some great stories on there, some information and statistics and things. So that'll be next week, and you have the poster to see the rest of it. Other than that, team captains, if you're in here, I don't need to know all of your team's points all the time. They're just going to send the points to their team captain at the end of the week. I only need them 2 times. One is for a mid-report, so that's February 6th. And then the next one that I need is February 22nd, at the very end. That's just because if you're competitive and you kind of want to know where your team is, if you're in first, last, or in between, mid-report might give you some motivation to go a little harder. The Wellness Challenge is supposed to be about a balance in our life. It's not just about, having to run a marathon and losing weight. It's not about that. It's just being aware of things like exercise, sleep, nutrition, drinking water. All right, so it's for everybody, and hopefully you have fun with it too. That's where we can be competitive between teams, encourage each other, and support. All right, well, that became a really long intro. I won't do that next week. So I'm going to pass this over. So this is, like I said, from Saskatchewan Health Authority. We have Kaylee here with us today talking about sensory environment. Thank you, Kaylee.
I'll turn this on.
All right.
Yeah, okay. So I wanted to talk about the sensory environment today, and then we do have a couple other pieces for that. So I am an occupational therapist. I work for the Saskatchewan Health Authority, and I was in the school division for about 3 years, and now I've been with Autism Services for almost 2 years. So I do want to give a little blip about what occupational therapy is, because people are like, can you help me get a job? So a lot of the time, that's not exactly what we're talking about for occupational therapy. So occupational therapy is the only profession that helps people across the lifespan, 0 to 99 plus, to do what they want and do the things they need to do throughout the day through the use of therapeutic daily activities. So a daily activity could be brushing your teeth, showering, it could be going for a walk, it could be going to your job, it could be, there's a number of things of what an occupation is. So as an OT, I help mainly my kids from 0 to 19 to live life to their fullest, help them promote their health, prevent or live better with injury, illness, or disability. And if there's any questions at any time, please feel free. So I'm just going to go in what an occupational is. This is my definition of it. If you think of an occupation of anything that occupies your time throughout the day. So that opens a big can of worms of what an occupational therapist can do. We do categorize it into 3 categories. One is leisure, one is self-care, and the other is productivity. So leisure, anything you do for fun. Self-care is everything to take care of yourself, including sleep. And then productivity could be volunteering, it could be going to visit your friends, it could be any of those things that provide some of that value to your life. So with being an OT, the sensory system is something that I deal with a lot, especially with my kids with autism. There are our 5 senses that everybody's learned about through school. You have taste, smell, touch, sight, and hearing. The other ones that are newer, or that people talk about, are the vestibular system. So that's our sense of balance, of knowing where our head is in space when we're doing activities. If you think of people who have like vertigo and they have some of that nauseous feeling, that is the one sensory system that might not be working as well. The other one is proprioception. So it's a big word for body awareness. If I can get you guys to close your eyes, put your hands out, try not to hit anybody. If you know where your body is in space without your vision, that is what proprioception is. It's our joints telling us where our body is in space. And then the last one, I'm going to go to the next slide because that picture's really slow. Well, really small. Okay, maybe I won't. Sorry. Mild inconvenience. The other one is called interoception. So if you think of anything internal, so we have pain, we can feel our stomach when we're getting hungry, you can feel when you're thirsty. I'm trying to think what else. You can feel like your heartbeat. All of those internal receptors are things that are telling your brain what your body is doing or what your body needs. So the sensory system is something really important. If you didn't have your sensory system working, you probably wouldn't survive. So that is our main goal of our sensory system, is to give us that information from the world, and then what we need to function in the world. So job number 1 is safety. So if you couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't feel touch, and something attacked you, like especially in like way back when you're living in caves and all of those things, likelihood of surviving is not very good. Our second job is to help us be active social creatures. So humans are wired to be social. They're wired to interact with other people, and then build those relationships, and those build that positivity in our life with the connection with other people. Also, if we weren't social creatures, humans would cease to exist. So for our sensory system, our first line of defense is our sight and our hearing. So if you're thinking of, if you're in your house at night and you hear this strange noise, your brain is alerted to be like, oh, like something's wrong, or you have to figure out what that was, and then you can figure out if it's safe or not. Also, when you see something, so you see someone driving down the road and they're turning when they're not supposed to turn, that is something that helps to protect you. I feel like I'm talking very fast, but
You're doing great.
if you have any questions. So our second line of defense is smell, light touch. So if you think of like a spider or something crawling, all of a sudden you're like, okay, like something's dangerous, I need to protect myself. And then taste. One of my coworkers this morning, she was making her bagel, whatever, and then all of a sudden she realized there was mold on it. Sometimes we don't get, so sometimes we can detect that, I guess, danger before, but sometimes, or then you can bring it close to your mouth and you can smell it and like, oh, I shouldn't eat that. Or sometimes you actually get to the step of and spitting it out. So our sensory system is there to protect us. So now to get in more of the scientific parts of it. So if you go, let's think. So the first step is the receptor in your cells has to register that something is happening. So if I have to actually touch, so that initial touches our receptors are like, okay, it's there. So that part is in my hand, that I felt felt something touch me. So then that message goes all the way up to our brain, where I'm also getting a whole lot of information. I can see everybody here. I can hear myself talking. I have all of those senses coming in once it hits that receptor in each of the different senses. The second part is modulation. So I'm going to go to this next slide and I'll come back to it. If you think of, I guess, a DJ and they have their big soundboard, they're like, oh, we got to turn that part down, add a little bass. So it's kind of like our brain is being the DJ for the senses in our head. So it'd be like, okay, I don't need to know that my clothes are touching me right now, so it's going to go turn the volume down on that, and then my brain is saying, okay, I need to be able to hear myself. What am I saying? Can I figure out, do I need to talk slower? I'm getting all of that feedback back to me, and that one part has to go up. I don't really need a whole lot of information about, I'm trying to think what else. So I guess I do need information about my balance, because I'm still standing up. If I was sitting down, I might need less information for that. Your brain just does that subconsciously. It figures out, okay, I need this to be up, I need this to be down, and then that helps us make sense of our world. Once that all happens, the sight, the sound, all of those systems comes together. Our brain decides what we need to do. It all comes together, and then we're going to make that subconscious decision. Sometimes we can override it with a conscious decision, but all of that is that subconscious. You don't really have to think about it. You only think about it when you actually bring attention to it. So our brains like to be calm. They like to be regulated. So this ensures our survival. The process occurs automatically. It's outside of our conscious awareness. And as we age, we learn to pay better attention to these things. Adults themselves can tolerate some uncomfortable sensory things. So if you think of fire alarms going off, we know that, okay, we have a plan. Fire alarm goes off, we go out here, we go outside the door. Whereas a child that's maybe 2, 3, doesn't have that understanding. It's loud. They might go running across the room. They might be crawling under the table. They have those responses to keep them safe. And then that part of your brain isn't kind of taking over that subconscious response. Does anybody have any questions so far? Or is that making sense?
I like the comparison to the DJ and the soundboard.
Yeah.
I think my DJ sometimes gets a little out of control.
You'd be like,
Yeah, the bass, everything's pounding, and I'm like, okay, sensory overload. So
Yeah.
I like that comparison. That makes sense.
Because it's like part of it, and then those later on in the presentation I'll have some things like here are the calming things, here are some of the alerting things, and we can talk a little bit more about some of the things that you can do. There are little tiny things that you can do on a daily basis, like I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, what can I do? Like,
Take a deep breath.
yeah, take a deep breath, you can do a whole bunch of things. Yeah, so for especially the kids that I work with, or kids in general, if you see their sensory processing abilities, their behavior is going to reflect that. As we are older, like as you age, you can better able to kind of take over that response and be like, no, that's going to make me look ridiculous. Or someone's going to be like, are you okay? Like some of those things that we're better able to keep it together. Sometimes. So next I'm just going to talk about the sensory processing theory. So these are some of the OTs that have developed it. The two pieces are, there's a threshold. So there's high threshold or low threshold. It's just the amount of information that you need to actually, for your body to actually register that it's happening. My one OT colleague, she is a low register, so she has a really high threshold. So in the morning, she would have the music blaring in her vehicle because she needs to wake up. She had to have her coffee. There's some things that she needed to do in order to be like, okay, I'm ready for the world. I'm ready to go to work. I'm ready to take in that information. So sometimes she would walk across the room and not notice something. Like if I was blowing bubbles, she might not even pay attention to that because there wasn't enough information for her to actually register that. And then the other part is our behavior. So we're either going to do something about it or we're not going to do anything about it. So our high threshold passive person is what I was talking about, my colleague, that she could walk through the room and something wouldn't click. And she's like, oh. And then you would need to remind her or give her some things to help. So they have a low arousal, so might not be as emotional. They're slower to pay attention. Their emotions are little variation, so they might be hard to read. And then they kind of just go with the flow. So if you think of a sloth, like it takes a lot of input for them to actually react. There is a video out there that there's a sloth having a bath, and they literally had to like pick them up, throw them in the water, scrub them, and then they started moving fast. So that's the high threshold, and I'm not going to do anything about it. The low threshold, and I'm not going to do about it, are people that are very sensitive to, it could be touch, sound, taste. They have a high arousal level. They have difficulty focusing. So they might be like, oh, there's something out there. Oh, there's light. Oh, there's hockey pucks over in the other room hitting against the wall. So they're people that are going to be on high alert. I would hire them to be the surveillance people because they're always aware and they're like, okay, making sure things that are safe. They notice a lot of things in the environment, but they don't do anything about it. And sometimes with all of these things, it builds up in the day and then they finally just like, I'm done. They have a breaking point and they kind of explode, which happens to everybody. Like these things are, there's a whole spectrum, I guess, of you might be having a good day and that might not happen. You might be having a really, really, really bad day and it's just, you have to let go of it because it's going to be built up on you. So we'll go to, so the high threshold, so they need lots of sensory information and they are going to do something about it. So if you think of a child, like lots of times little boys, they need to be moving at all times. They're like, what's that? Let's go. So they're doing something about it. They're fluctuating attention, so they might be going really, really fast. They go here, and then they're able to sit down and play for a little bit. And then they need to go do something else, and then they sit down and play for it. So they just bounce from one thing to another with a little bit of focus on that. Their emotional state changes a lot, so they can be very happy, they can be very sad, and they actively seek out that sensation, so they can be really disorganized. And the last one would be a low threshold, and they're going to do something about it. These are people that seem very fearful or anxious. They really like routines, rules, because they want to know what to expect. And they're very vigilant of their surroundings. So these are the people that if something's happened, they're gone, they're out the door as fast as they can. Because they can't handle it, and they're going to do something about it. Does anybody have any questions about that? There's lots of information in there. So these are going to be the more important parts. So what can affect our sensory processing? If you're tired, if you didn't have a good sleep, if you're hungry, if you're sick, if you're thirsty, if something's painful, if you can't walk on your foot because you're in pain, emotions, if you had an argument with someone and you're upset about that, the rest of the day might be a little bit harder to deal with, age, hormones, and anything else that throws off our homeostasis. So as we age, we learn to pay better attention to the signs. So if you think of, if anybody likes wine, when you first started wine, you might not pick up some of the subtle details, and you can actually train your system to pick up more. I would have don't take a wine recommendation from me because I have no idea. So adults can reason with themselves to tolerate those uncomfortable sensory situations. So does anybody like tags in their clothes? No. So some days for me, I can tolerate the tag just fine. Other days I'm like, I wear the scissors. I need to cut this out as fast as I can. So it really depends on where you are, what time of day, if you're having a good day. All of those things can affect that. So things that are sensitive and avoiding people can do, we really want to block out some of that information. So things that we can do would be wearing a hat, wearing sunglasses, sometimes inside, wearing a toque because it'll block out some of that auditory piece or information. Using task lights instead. If you're really sensitive to some of these fluorescent lights, using like a lamp or something to have that light or some natural light is a lot better. It might be a little bit less irritating. You can block it out by even just like if you're at work and you're like, okay, I need to take my stretch break. I'm just going to close my eyes for a second just to block out some of that sensory information. There's lots of ways to block out some of these information. So for the sound, you can wear earplugs. You can put ear protectors on, like the big earmuffs. You can wear toques. You can play white noise, or you can even have your own personal music player. A lot of the times with my kids, they end up making their own noise, so they can control the environment. They can block out the noise in the background by making their own. So we have lots of our kids that are like, I need to talk all the time because I can't handle that information coming into my brain.
So we can start singing. So what I'm hearing is at work, if you need to do that, you can start humming and singing, and that will calm you and annoy everybody around you. But
it's true.
Shelley, be prepared.
It's like, here, have your earplugs, and I'm just going to sing for a while.
Yeah.
Which is actually really good because it actually promotes breathing slowly. So for taste and smell, we have lots of people who end up like, or people that don't like spices, or they kind of limit what is in their taste repertoire. As well as, I know in the environments now we have a lot of, please don't wear scents because it really does bother lots of people. So just being aware of that for yourself and others. And then for touch, so cutting out tags, washing your clothes before that first wear. There's lots of things you can do for that. And then wearing tighter clothing versus loose. I had a little girl who came in, and she loves to dress up, but she would just kind of melt down when she had like a loose, flowy shirt, just because it's this light touch that sends us into more of a stress response versus if you actually press, like a massage, that deep pressure is actually modulating, so it's going to be helping us if we're too low to get back in that zone, and if we're too high to kind of get back into that good zone for processing. And then for calming strategies, anything with a constant rhythm, especially a slower rhythm, is going to be calming. So if you think of like the chants or music that has just like some of the classical music has a very distinct slower rhythm. Anything, so swinging, like any rocking in a glider or rocking chair, that rhythmic movement is really calming for our nervous system, unless you feel are sick doing that. So if you feel sick, try not to do this much. Some of that deep breathing. So one of the things that I learned about deep breathing is when you breathe in, the slower the release is going to be more calming than you breathe in. So taking that nice slow release, that's why singing also provides it, because you're actually controlling your diaphragm and some of the muscles in here for that deep breath. And then I didn't finish the word, but it's supposed to say deep touch pressure. So that massage of providing that. This is what I do with a lot of the kids, is just provide, I call them toothpaste squeezes, kind of like you're simulating taking the toothpaste to the very end to try and get the rest out of it. And then I will talk about some other modulating activities. And the other thing that I do with people would be that desensitization therapy, that we slowly get them used to touch or sound, just giving them little by little of helping them cope with that a little bit better.
I'm just going to do a little interrupt because I know some of you need to get back to the office and stuff. I apologize, it was probably because of my long intro. But there is just a time there, so it is 1:45, which is what we said. So if you need to, that's fine. Just sneak out, we'll finish up Kaylee's, but if you can stay, that's fine too. Just to let you know. I'm not too sure, we didn't talk exactly about, I don't know about your presentation and how much longer.
I think I'm almost close to being done.
Okay.
I just wanted to talk about the heavy work, but this is for anybody who needs more information, so that higher threshold. For sight, you can kind of bold or highlight things. You can have a more, like anything with more contrast is going to give you more information. Listening to music that has like not that steady beat, that's a little bit more sporadic, is going to be something that helps to alert you a little bit. Adding spices, flavors, smelling anything that's citrusy or spicy. So if anybody has the essential oils like that citrus, lemon, orange, and then some of the more spicy ones are going to be more alerting. And then touch. So if you have a feather or something like that, light touch is going to be more alerting than that deeper pressure. One thing that I do use when I'm getting tired for driving is spits, because it gives me something that to crunch and chew and keep my mouth awake, so then the rest of me is more alert. Kind of shaking your head, sometimes I do that, or opening the window and letting a little bit of cold air. All of those things are going to be alerting. And I did mention that. So also carbonation is something that can be alerting, and your coffee and tea. So if you think of the things that you do in the morning when you're not quite ready to go, so lots of people have their coffee, their tea, their brisk walk outside. Those are the things that are going to be alerting and getting you ready. So this is kind of our cycle of regulation. I did want to mention for the high threshold, low threshold, it can be different for every sense that you have. I forgot to mention that. So this is where we want to be in that just right state. If you get super excited, or some people are like really emotional, you might be in that, and then you think of a kid having a tantrum, and then eventually they're like, you can't even talk to them, and then they're out cold because they're just so done. Which that shutdown can look a lot like that low arousal as well. My sloth. So it's a whole cycle, and you can go back and forth. When we provide calming activities in this, hopefully we get to here, back to that just right. When we add some alerting activities here, we can hopefully get back to that just right for functioning in the day. So this is probably the easiest one that I can provide as a recommendation for everybody across the lifespan would be heavy work. Heavy work is just using your muscles. So this is going to be really good for the challenge of going for a walk, climbing the stairs. Anything that you can do to use your muscles. It provides you that modulating effect. So if you're hyper aroused, or if you're too excited or too stressed about something, if you do some heavy work, it should kind of bring you down back to that zone. And if you're not quite awake or not ready to do something, it'll bring you back up so you're getting ready for that day. You can use your whole muscles, arms, legs, body, and also your oral motor muscles. So things that we can do would be chew crunchy foods, sucking a thick liquid through a narrow straw, blowing bubbles or a pinwheel. When we're using the use of our hands, so we can do some squeezing, some pinching, and even just some of that fidgeting. It's all about resistance. So it can be your body weight, it can be that I'm going to have to go shovel a walk if it ever snows. All of those things can help organize our whole system. So when you're saying that your soundboard felt like it's all off, this is something that's going to help organize that so it's better able to do some of that modulation piece of it. So it improves your attention, it kind of wakes you up or calms you down depending on what you need, and it provides you where that your body awareness is, and that kind of can decrease some of that defensiveness or that, I don't like that. So we feel calm, organized, and satisfied when our muscles are working hard. For every person, it's a little bit different, and you kind of have to play around with it of what makes you feel the best. So the effect, that calming effect, or that waking up effect, depending on what you need, lasts about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So you kind of want to plan those accordingly for your day. So when they say for wellness for the workplace, it's important to either go for your walk at your coffee break, because that's probably every about an hour and a half to 2 hours. You have a lunch break, you can do some physical activity there. And you can do it from 1 minute up to 15 minutes, depending on the intensity and the rhythm and the frequency of it. And usually I tell people you have to try at least 10 times to see if it was helpful or not, just to get more of a habit. So these are just some examples of heavy work, and I think this is part of the second last slide. So really, this is just a very small list of what heavy work is. So it could be gardening, it could be raking leaves, shoveling snow, climbing stairs, going downstairs, going for a walk, carrying your groceries in, anything that's pushing, pulling, lifting a weight. It could be swimming, playing tug of war, climbing, jumping, and I already mentioned going for a walk, but this is a very small list, and it can be very long. It's anything that's using your muscles. The last slide I have, and then if you have any questions, feel free to come and ask me. So sensory processing disorder is something that is out there. It's not in the DSM-5, but in the States it's probably more prevalent as a diagnosis. So it's those people that the sensory information comes in, but it doesn't get organized in the appropriate responses that we want. So they can perceive something or respond to sensory information differently than others. So it's unlike people who have just sight or hearing impairments. They are actually able to take in that sensory information, but it just gets mixed up. So it's like if our air traffic controllers decided that they were going to have a nap, and they're falling asleep, and all the planes don't really know where they're supposed to be. So they get mixed up, and therefore you get responses that you're just like okay, and then that is something that I help a lot of people work with, of trying to help give them strategies to make it not get mixed up as much, or have plans and things that are in their environment to help with that. I think that is a wrap for my presentation. Does anybody have any questions about? That's a lot of information. Yeah.
So you said like kids don't have the same boards that adults do. Does it decrease again as you get like to be a senior or like in your older ages? I know it like naturally occurs, like maybe your hearing's not as good anymore, but
Yeah. So usually our sensory processing, I guess if you say profile of what you are when you're a kid, it stays the same throughout life. As we age, we can start making those conscious decisions to say, no, I'm not going to run away. I need to stay here and do this presentation. Like when you're feeling anxious about something. But as you're older too, it might decrease just depending on some of those cognitive pieces that you might not be able to be like, think in that situation and be like, no, I shouldn't do that, or no, I shouldn't spit at you, or things like that, that you're like, So yeah, it does change throughout, just that conscious, I guess more of that cognitive piece that can take over that subconscious piece, but it's kind of that life cycle back that way. Thank you for the question. Anybody else? Are you free to go back to work? About 5 minutes.
I think also, as I was just listening to that, I like that one where we try to bring our best selves back to that state. I don't know what it was called. The state
Self-regulation. Well, it's the...
Yeah, that's okay. But back where, basically where we want, the balance, the normal, the healthy. We know what it feels like.
Just right state.
A just right state, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting explaining how our senses can kind of get us off of that. And even like you were saying, heavy work and stuff, you know, when we think of the wellness challenge, we know all this stuff. We know that exercise is good for us. We know drinking water is good for us. We know that sleep. And we also know when we don't have those things, how life seems to get off balance. So
this is one of the reasons why.
And right, exactly. This is the reasons why, to understand it. But I never really thought of, even when I was a teacher, we did lots of that with the sensory, but I never think of doing that for myself. Other than I do ask for massages at home. I don't get them very often, but I do.
Yeah, you're like, I need to calm down. You need to give me a massage.
That's right. I'm going to use that.
That sounds good.
I have research to prove it.
Yeah.
Anything else from anybody?
If you think of one, let her know and I can maybe answer it.
Yeah, for sure. You know what? That's a very good point. At any point in the Wellness Challenge, if there's something from those who are watching on the video, or also if you think of it, or someone's like, wonder what that meant, or I'd like to see that slide, or I have a question, just email me, and I have all email contacts to get from the presenters. So, went a little bit over. I won't talk as long as next time. Well, no promises, actually. You know that slide I just said about the social? Yeah, I need the socials. Anyways, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for coming. Have a fantastic day. Good luck with your challenge. Go get her, and we'll see some of you next week. Thank you very much, Kaylee.
Thank you.